Yes, Geordies, welcome back to another episode. Hope everyone's well. And if you didn't know already, it's 2 more sleeps to the Premier League is back. This summer, we've done thousands upon thousands of scout reports, transfer news. But guess what? Today is going to be your first day of a match preview. First of many, because Newcastle United have got Champions League next season. And see what you like. I love Premier League football. I love European football. No matter what summer we've had, I'm always optimistic and always excited about the season ahead. So before we get on to this match preview, I want you to drop your predictions in the below. Where do you think Newcastle United will finish? But also, do you think we'll go deep in the Champions League or perhaps win another trophy? Guys, I kid you not, I'm actually generally excited for the season. I'm going to go through exactly why throughout this window, but what's not to be excited about? Football's back. Newcastle United are back on our tellies. We've got European and Champions League football, so that draw is very, very close. So once that draw is announced, I will be doing a video on that as well. But this video, we're going to be doing a match preview, but I want to spend a little time looking at our summer window, and then we're going to be previewing Aston Villa against Newcastle United. We're going to look at the trajectories because it is fascinating just how similar both clubs have been over the past couple of years. Then we're going to look at our record at Villa Park. That's probably a segment that you might want to skip. What do I expect from Aston Villa? How can we capitalise and exploit their weaknesses? And then I'm going to predict both starting 11s. Now, it's difficult to do on an opening day of the season because you're basing everything off last season because managers can adapt or tweak their system and philosophy. So I've got no doubt these match previews will get a lot more thorough and in detail as the season goes on. But the very first thing we're going to do is look at our summer window because I think secretly we're actually having a decent window. So let's break it all down. So we've brought in Anthony Elanga. I think this is a top signing, brings much needed depth in the right wing position. Then we also brought in Aaron Ramsdale. Now this is only a loan, but it's an upgrade on Dubravka, if I am being perfectly honest, and he does find his feet at Newcastle United. We then brought in Antonio Cordero. Now this is a one for the future, so I don't think he's going to have an immediate impact. And then we strengthened the position that we're desperate to strengthen. We brought in Malik Chow to bring in much needed depth in that centre-back position. So you're probably sitting there thinking, well, that's not many. That's not great. But look at the departures, right? We've let Lloyd Kelly go. We've let Sean Longstaff go. Alan Wilson, Martin Dubravka, and then Antonio Cordero went out on loan. So let's strip it back, right? Let's think about Anthony Elanga. He is an upgrade on what we had because we didn't have cover for our right wing position. But if you even go back further, he's definitely an upgrade on Miguel Almiron. So that's a positive. Look at Aaron Ramsdale. He brings some much needed younger goalkeeper to our goalkeepers. But not only that, he also brings competition for Nick Pope. So now we're asking and demanding Nick Pope to step up his game. Because if not, then Aaron Ramsdale's going to get an opportunity. And Aaron Ramsdale's got a point to prove because it's a World Cup year and he doesn't want to spend the season playing on the bench. And he can also play in Champions League football. So he wants to make that number one spot his own. So there's two positive. What's the third positive? Malik Chow. Why is that a positive? Because we've brought in a young 24-year-old experienced centre-back with the fundamentals to fit Eddie Howe's philosophy and how he likes to use his centre-back. And it also brings cover for Fabian Schär. So there is three big positives. So now with the extra games in the Champions League, especially now that there's 8 instead of 6, we can rotate Murphy with Elanga. We can rotate Fabian Schär with Malik Chow. We can rotate Sven Botman with Dan Burn. So in these areas of the football pitch, we're not going to have as much burnout as what we're seeing in the Champions League. So what I'm saying is, considering how this window have gone, think about all the targets that were missed out on. Hugo Ekitike, João Pedro, Brian Mbumo, James Trafford, Liam Delap, Matthias Cunha. The list goes on and on and on. And we went in the summer window without a director of football, uncertainty in the direction of the club. And then Alexander Isak selfishly messing up our window. Who? Alexander Isak? Who's he? I've forgotten him already, to be honest. I do not want to see Alexander Isak playing in black and white. I'm sorry. But I think he's just really shown his true colours. So given all the adversity this window, it's really not too bad. Now, Jake V is likely to come in, which is an upgrade on Sean Longstaff. The only thing we haven't done this window is boosted our squad. But there's still 3 weeks left. And the beauty and why I'm still positive about having a good and strong end of the window is because we've shown and we've proven that we've got money to spend. We were willing to spend £60 million, £69 million, £80 million on one player. Do you really think Eddie Howe's sitting there thinking we don't need to bolster and bring in depth to this squad. I think he knows that. That's why I do think we'll get 1 or 2 more faces, or maybe 3 or 4 before the window shuts. So if we do bring in 3 or 4 players, it can be a very good end to this summer window. 1 or 2 strikers, depending on this Alexander Isak situation, and 1 or 2 multi-phase midfielders. Now, my preference, I would bring in 2 midfielders. I'd bring in somebody that's a multi-phase midfielder that can play the Joe Linton role, that can play the Sandro Tonali role. But on top of that, I would also bring in a locksmith, somebody that is cute, clever, a raw playmaker between the lines. Although we might be signing Jacob Ramsey, I would still go all out and sign Bilal El Khanous. Or can you go and sign somebody like Magnus El Khanouch? Somebody of that type of profile that is known to be a locksmith. Because we struggle against low blocks, so we need an answer to that struggle. Now, the beauty about our midfield positions is we don't need necessarily somebody to come in and be in our starting 11. We can bring in a young midfielder that we can grow, develop, where they can learn from Joe Linton, learn from Bruno, learn from Tonali, because these are all exceptional professionals. And if they have a year learning under their guidance, next season, we could be devastating. So what I'm saying is there are plenty of midfielders out there where you don't need to spend north of 60 million. You can go and spend 20 million, 30 million, maybe even 10 million on a midfielder and allow them to grow within the club. Plant that seed, watch them grow into that flower. So what I'm trying to say is we don't necessarily need that finished article because we already have probably one of the best midfield combos in the league. Right, getting back to the preview, because I want to talk about Aston Villa and Newcastle United because their trajectory over the past couple of years has been absolutely insane. Newcastle have done something one season, the next season it's been Aston Villa have done the exact same. But let's talk about what's happened over the years at Aston Villa and Newcastle United because they've both had a change of ownership. Aston Villa's was before Newcastle United, but they both went through that similar change of ownership in terms of trying to grow the club globally and break into that top 6. Now, they've both had a massive managerial impact. Before Unai Emery joined Aston Villa and before Eddie Howe joined Newcastle United, the two clubs were hovering towards the bottom end of the Premier League. Now, both of them are top 6 contenders with ambitions of disrupting the traditional elite. And boy, do I hope we do that. So we've both had similar trajectories in terms of hovering around the bottom end of the Premier League, being relegated at times, now competing for European places. Speaking about European places, Newcastle qualified for Champions League. Following season, Aston Villa qualified for Champions League. Newcastle finished 4th in the 2022-23 season. Aston Villa finished 4th in the 2023-24 season. During both Champions League campaigns, they both failed to re-qualify for Champions League. So again, they've done the exact same. Now, funnily enough, Aston Villa narrowly missed out on Champions League on the final day of the season. Who to? Newcastle United. We all know that disallowed Morgan Rogers' goal. I won't bring it up again. Now, the one thing that Newcastle United did last season that if this trajectory is to be believed, Aston Villa will do this season, and that is win a trophy. So we both went from the depth of the Premier League to the top of the Premier League. We'll both qualify for Champions League football, one after another. Newcastle won a trophy. Now it's time for Aston Villa to win a trophy. I just thought it was mad, the comparison between the two. Now, let's talk about our record at Villa Park because our record over the past couple of seasons has been absolutely diabolical. 6 games, 1 win, no draws, 5 defeats. Scored 4 goals, conceded 14. 2019-20 season, we got beat 2-0. Same the following season, same the following season. The next season, 2022-23, got beat 3-0. The next season after that, 2023-24, we actually won at Villa Park, surprisingly. And then last season, we all know we got battered 4-1. I kind of feel like games between Aston Villa and Newcastle, because they're so very similar in terms of playing style, competitiveness, home advantage is absolutely massive. And when I speak about similar playing styles, now, first game of the season, it's difficult to predict how teams will set up. So remember this as a prediction. But based off recent seasons, the two teams have similar playing styles, but different setup formations. Aston Villa set up in a 4-2-3-1. Newcastle United use a 4-3-3. But what they do on the pitch in terms of their philosophy is very similar. They have the left wing acting as an inverted winger to create overloads in central areas and support the striker. They have their left back who given more freedom to exploit space than their right back. They also have their right back acting as a touchline winger, providing width, create more space centrally. Newcastle United do the exact same. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. If you look at Aston Villa's heat maps here from their right back, left winger and right winger off last season, as you can see, the most touches of their left winger was more in the inside left channels, and the right winger was more on the outside. So the right winger was a guy who provided the width. The left winger was the one who inverted, and that gave more freedom to the left back to advance forward, and that's why he averages a higher heat map in the attacking third than the right back. Newcastle United do something very similar with their wingers. Now, I've only got the wingers for Newcastle United, but it tells you 1,000 stories. If you look at our left winger's heat map in comparison to the right winger is our touchline winger. He stays wide, hogs the touchline, provides the width, and the left winger is the one that's given the license to come in, get involved in the play, and link up with the striker and support the striker. So if you're wondering, that's Anthony Gordon's heat map and Jacob Murphy's heat map from last season. So it's quite similar how they use their fullbacks and their wingers. But the difference is in the central area. So because what Unai Emery wants to do is prioritise numerical advantages in central areas. This is why Unai Emery likes loads of profiles with narrow, wide midfielders, because they're the players that are happy to receive split passes between the lines, while Watkins is the one that drifts wide and exploits space. Newcastle don't really have those types of players, and we play with a three-man midfield. So if we're looking further what you can expect from Aston Villa was the most foul team in the Premier League last season, and they created the most shots from dead ball situations. So that's one thing that we need to be cautious of, giving away needless free kicks. Now, personally, I think the battle in midfield will be key to this football game. And the reason being is because we have to stop their midfield overloads. Now, I trust Joe Linton, Bruno and Sandro Tonali to do it. But again, Aston Villa are so dangerous in those midfield areas. Because what Unai Emery likes to do is have his team fluidly create a box shape in midfield. The way they do this is because Unai Emery plays with a number 10. So their double pivot forms a bottom shape of that box. Their number 10 moves as a right number 10, and their left winger comes inside and plays as a left 10. Then you've got that box shape. You're probably sitting there thinking, why does this cause a problem? Because ideally what they want to do is create a 4v3 overload. So when they are playing between the lines, they've always got that passing option. There's always going to be a man spare. So in simplistic terms, if Bruno's marking Unana, Joe Linton's marking Kamara, and Sandro Tonali's marking Tielemans, then you've got Morgan Rogers free. So that also means your right back has a decision to make. So does he come inside with Morgan Rogers to make it a 4v4? If he does that, then he's leaving the left back out wide, free in space. So that means your right back has got to do a job. So then you're less dangerous on the counter attack. Or if he doesn't come inside and stays with the left back who's providing the width, then they've got that 4-against-3 overloaded midfield. And then on top of that, Villa have some quality players. Youri Tielemans is one of the most underrated bowlers in the Premier League, in my opinion. His ability to dictate play, his pass selection is absolutely outstanding. So if he gets on the ball in those central areas, he can punish you. And then you've got Morgan Rogers, who's a big transitional threat, exceptional ball carrier, deep in open space runner. So you've got to be alert to these scenarios and situations. And this is why I think the midfield battle will be absolutely key. So how can Newcastle United capitalise on this? Well, because Villa's wide midfielders took inside, leaving space behind Matty Cash and Lucas Digne, overload the wide areas, and you do this with overlapping runs. That's why Tino, Anthony Elanga, Lewis Hall, and probably Harvey Barnes are going to be absolutely massive when it comes to creating for us. So that's pretty much saying, right, Villa, if you want to overload the central areas, we're going to exploit the space you leave in the wider areas. So by doing that, you get them thinking about their defensive shape rather than their offensive shape. So you're preventing them getting in that box shape rather than them preventing you creating wide overloads. Does that make sense? So we have to make the pitch big, because once you make the pitch big, it separates their midfielders and it forces their left winger not to come inside. Because if he decides to come inside, then we've got a 2v1 overload out wide with Anthony Elanga and Tino Livramento. And with Tino's pace, energy, he can be up and down that touchline. So Morgan Rogers has got no choice but to go back with Tino. So by doing that, you're taking away their threat and what they want to do in offensive transitions. Now, my next point is their left back is the one that advances forward than their right back. And I know Anthony Elanga is still trying to find his feet and build those partnerships on the pitch. However, his pace and directness could be a weapon against their advancing left back. So I would look to exploit that space behind their left back as much as possible. And the reason why I wouldn't look to play through central areas is because their centre backs are protected by a double pivot. So that means it's not going to be easy penetrating through the middle of the pitch. So finally, another week in stop and prevent the 4-against-3 overload is by pushing the centre-back into midfield. Now, we do this anyways, so that is definitely something that will happen. So what we need to do is transition quickly, isolate wide areas into one-on-one situations or two-on-one situations. And if Anthony Gordon plays as a false 9, you have to have midfield runners from deep through channels, because without that, if he's dropping deep all the time, you're not trying to get him behind and penetrating and stretching the pitch. So without those midfield runners, we can't really play with a false 9, which takes us on what I am worried about. Now, this is how I think we will line up. I think it'll be Pope in net, Tino right back, Fabian Shaw, Dan Burn at centre back, Lewis Hall at left back, the midfield 3, Bruno, Tonali, Joelinton, Anthony Elanga on the right, Harvey Bond on the left, and Anthony Gordon as a false 9. Now, the reason I say we've got a good chance this season is because we're not actually missing many players from our starting 11 that's given us so much success over the past couple of seasons. The only difference is there's no Alexander Isak. Yes, that's 23 goals that we're missing out on. But when it comes to competing with teams and not being run over, fully trust the lads. Now, the negatives. We need to talk about what I'm worried about, and I am worried about our ability to create, because watching these pre-season games, we haven't created much, and I often say, I don't mind us missing chances as long as we're creating those chances. I get more worried when those chances stop coming. If you continue to create chances, you will score goals, and if you stop creating chances, you've got no chance of scoring goals. So I'm more worried about when we don't create chances rather than missing chances. That's my biggest problem, because when you play with a false 9, you need deep runners from midfield. We don't have really space exploiting midfielders. Somebody like a Morgan Rogers or Aston Villa's new signing Evan Gassan. They're all players that will run past and beyond the last line of defense. We don't really see that from Joelinton, Bruno or Tonali. So if Anthony Gordon's dropping deep all the time, Aston Villa are just going to squeeze the pitch and give us no room to play through. So Anthony Elanga has to use his pace, and Harvey Barnes has to be more alert to runs in behind. Otherwise, we're not going to create anything. And if you look back in this preseason, we've only really created from set pieces. So in truth, guys, I'm going to be honest, I can't see us outscoring Aston Villa. Now, what we can do is try and make it tight, make it compact, and try and nick a goal. That's something that we'll have to do, because I can't see us creating enough chances to score 3 or 4 goals. That's my biggest concern. But this is how I think Aston Villa will line up if anybody wants to see it. But it's difficult to predict Aston Villa's starting 11, because I wouldn't be surprised to see some of their new signings start, Evan Gesend or even Donnell Mallon start. But Emery values players who can operate in different roles. You've got Tillemans, who can play in the double pivot or as a number 10. You've got Rogers, who can play as a number 10 or a wide. You've got McGinn, who can play all 3 roles. So I wouldn't be surprised to see McGinn play. So it's difficult to predict Aston Villa's starting 11, because their players are very multicultural. But look, I'm going to be honest. I can't see us scoring 2 goals. I can see us nicking a goal. So if we can keep it to a 1-1 draw or maybe nick a goal at the end, I'd be happy with that. But I do, considering our record at Villa Park, I do think it's going to be tough. That's not me saying we're definitely going to get beat. I've just got to be honest. But I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Do you agree with anything I've said? If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If there's anything you could add in to improve these videos, let me know in the comments, and I'll certainly do it, or consider it at least. But once again, thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Just want to finally say the Premier League is back. Newcastle United are back. Away the lads.